The morning fog hadn't lifted yet, but I knew something was off. The creek should have been running clear, the kind of lazy trickle that made the hills around here so damn beautiful. But when I looked out my window, I noticed something strange. A drop in water level. Just a couple of feet, but enough to set off every alarm in my head. I walked down to the creek, boots crunching through the frost-covered grass. There it was, the pipe. An ugly thing, snaking its way through the hillside like some kind of parasitic worm. I hadn't put it there, that much I knew. It wasn't even a small pipe, either. It was big. Big enough to siphon off water like a damn floodgate. I should have known something was up with the HOA, but I had been busy. Really busy. In the last 6 months, my cows had been growing like gangbusters, and I'd been trying to juggle feeding, breeding, and getting the fencing fixed. Who had time to keep tabs on what was going on down the road at Coyote Ridge? Apparently, I should have. I called up Gus, my buddy who had a knack for digging into people's business. "Hey, Gus," I said, "you know anything about an illegal water line running from my creek to the HOA?" Gus laughed, loud and cynical. "Only that they've been eating up water like it's free. You didn't know? They're trying to turn that whole subdivision into a luxury paradise. Artificial lakes, waterfalls, you name it. They think they can just take your water and call it a community amenity." A sudden anger bubbled up in me, followed by that gut-sinking realization. I had been played. The HOA had been quietly stealing my water, for who knows how long. I headed straight for the HOA office, my boots kicking up dirt as I approached their pristine little compound. Karen, the HOA president, was there, of course, standing at the front desk with her perfect, thus bright smile and high and mighty attitude. "Can I help you?" she asked, all sweetness and light. I threw a folder onto the counter, slamming it with a thud. "You can explain why I found a damn pipeline siphoning water from my creek," I said, leaning in close. Her smile faltered for just a second before she regained composure. "I don't know what you're talking about. Our community is focused on sustainable living and—" "Cut the crap," I interrupted. "I'm not here for your greenwashing speech. Either you get that pipe off my land, or I'll make sure you're the one drowning in legal fees." She swallowed hard. "You don't know who you're messing with. This is a matter of community development." "Yeah, I know," I said, cutting her off. "And I'm the one who's going to shut it down. But first, I need some answers." Karen gave me that tight-lipped smile again, the kind people put on when they know they've got a few tricks left up their sleeves. I could see the wheels turning behind her eyes, but I wasn't in the mood to play games. She straightened her back, folding her arms across her chest like she was the one who held all the cards. "You should be careful," she said in that tone, the one that made my skin crawl. Taking legal action against the HOA is one thing, but when the entire community is behind this project, well, let's just say it might not go the way you think. "Yeah, well, I don't need a community to back me up. I've got the law," I shot back, not backing down an inch. "Now, let me make myself clear. If I catch another drop of my water running through that pipeline, I'll sue your entire HOA back into the last century." Karen's smile thinned. "That's cute, but you'd be surprised how much influence a few well-placed donations and the right political connections can buy. You'll be out of your depth." I didn't flinch. "Karen, the only thing I'm out of is patience. And I'm about to start a lawsuit that's going to make this whole thing a legal headache for you and your HOA buddies. You want to play dirty? Fine. Let's see how you like it when I start poking around in your financials, your permits, and your sweet little development project." She hesitated for a moment, maybe considering how far I was willing to go. Then she pushed a button on her desk, signaling her secretary to bring over a stack of papers. "Here," she said, tossing the documents at me. "You'll find all the permits and approval documents in there. Everything's perfectly legal." I took the stack and flipped through it, scanning the pages. It didn't take long to realize that most of it was either incomplete or had some fine print that screamed illegal. I didn't need to be a lawyer to know they were trying to pull a fast one. But I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. "Nice try, but none of these show you got permission from me. That pipeline? Still trespassing. I'm giving you 1 week to remove it. After that, I'll be contacting the state's Department of Water Resources and the EPA, and I'll make sure everyone hears about it." Karen's face turned a shade of red I'd only seen in a few angry bulls. She stood up from her desk with a practiced, smooth motion. You don't know who you're dealing with. This isn't just some backyard rancher against a fancy HOA. This is a battle between progress and stagnation. And if you think you can take us down, think again. Progress? I sneered. You mean greed. You're building fake lakes while draining my creek dry. That's progress? Funny how progress always seems to cost someone else everything. She didn't respond, just shot me a death glare before turning to her secretary. Call the contractor. Get them to double-check the water flow rate. We may need to adjust the pipeline's location. I smiled, knowing I had her rattled. Go ahead. But if you even think about touching my creek again, I'll have you in court before you can say water rights. And I'll make sure it's a mess so deep you won't find the bottom. As I turned to leave, I felt the weight of battle settle over me. This wasn't just about water anymore. It was about something much bigger. Standing my ground when the world was trying to take what was mine. The next few days were tense. Karen wasn't one to back down easily, but she wasn't exactly playing her cards close to her chest anymore either. I started getting strange phone calls, messages from unknown numbers, and even a letter addressed to me from the HOA, all with the same tone. We're watching you, Hank. It was a little unsettling, but I wasn't about to let it rattle me. If anything, it only confirmed that I had her on the ropes. Gus, my trusty ranch hand, noticed it too. You're not looking over your shoulder, are you? That's not like you. I shook my head, though the nagging feeling still lingered. Nah, just keeping my eyes open. That HOA's got more tricks up their sleeves than a magician at a kid's party, but they're about to pull the wrong card. Then came the first big twist, an unexpected visitor. It was early one morning when I saw the black SUV parked at the edge of my property. The door opened, and out stepped a tall guy in a sharp suit and sunglasses, looking like he just stepped out of an office building instead of the wilderness. Can I help you? I called out, not bothering to mask my suspicion. He adjusted his sunglasses and smiled, an unsettling, practiced smile that never quite reached his eyes. Name's Brent. I'm with Coyote Ridge's development team. The HOA sent me to, well, let's just say I'm here to smooth things over. I raised an eyebrow. Smooth things over? You mean after you've been illegally diverting my water? After you've built your little oasis on my land? I don't think smooth is what you're after. Brent didn't flinch. We're all adults here. Let's just talk. No need to make this more difficult than it needs to be. I folded my arms. And what exactly are we going to talk about? You guys stealing my water, or are we discussing how much of my land you're planning to bulldoze next? He took a step forward, looking almost pitying. Look, Hank, I get it. You're upset. But this is bigger than you. The community's been growing and... Don't give me that community speech, I interrupted, the sarcasm dripping off every word. I don't care if you build 1,000 McMansions on top of each other. It doesn't give you the right to steal what's mine. Brent's smile faltered just for a second. I see you're not one for compromise. That's unfortunate. He reached into his briefcase, pulled out a stack of papers, and handed them to me. But this might change your mind. An offer to make this right in a way that benefits both sides. I took the papers and skimmed through them, not surprised to see a hefty check offered in exchange for my water rights. The amount was tempting. More money than I'd ever seen in one place, but it felt dirty, like they were trying to buy me off. I tossed the papers back at him. That's the thing, Brent. You think money solves everything, but what you don't get is that this isn't about money. It's about the land, and you can't just toss a few $1,000s at someone and expect them to hand over what's theirs. Brent's jaw clenched, but he quickly regained his composure. Hank, you're making this harder than it has to be. The HOA just wants to make sure that everyone has enough water. There's no need for animosity. I laughed, the sound as sharp as a knife. No need for animosity? You're siphoning my creek dry, and you think we should all sit around singing Kumbaya? You've got another thing coming, pal. He stood there for a moment, studying me like I was some puzzle he couldn't quite solve. I'm not going to waste more of your time, Hank, but I think you'll reconsider once the developers get involved. I raised my chin. Go tell your bosses that I'm not for sale. You want my water? You'll have to fight me for it in court. Brent took a deep breath, but before he could say anything more, I turned my back and walked toward the barn. I could hear his footsteps behind me for a few seconds, then the sound of his car engine as he drove off in a huff. He was clearly used to getting what he wanted with a flash of cash and a few well-worded threats. Well, he just met someone who didn't give a damn about either. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal meetings, heated exchanges, and threats that felt like they came straight out of a mob movie. But despite the pressure, I was calm. My lawyer, a scrappy woman named Amanda who could make a bulldozer look like a kitten, was handling things well. The HOA wasn't giving up without a fight, and neither was I. Amanda had been digging into their finances, their history, their every move, and she had found something that made her eyes light up like a Christmas tree. They've been skimming funds from other projects, she told me one evening as we went over papers, and they've been padding the numbers on those community water meters to make it look like they're using less than they actually are. If we can prove they've been falsifying reports and siphoning water illegally, we can hit them hard. I leaned back in my chair, letting the weight of the situation sink in. And if we can't prove it, Amanda's smile never wavered. We're going to prove it. Trust me. I wasn't entirely sure how we'd pull it off, but Amanda's confidence was contagious. She was a bulldog in court, and she had a way of making the law bend to her will. I just had to keep my cool. But the HOA wasn't about to just roll over. I should have known better. A few days after Amanda sent her initial warning letter, things took a weird turn. I was on the porch, sipping my coffee, when I noticed something strange in the distance. Black SUVs, the same kind that Brent had been driving, pulling up along the edge of my land. I frowned, watching them carefully. They had a group of people with them. There were no construction trucks, no equipment, just a handful of suited-up individuals with clipboards and a strange sense of urgency about them. I wasn't sure what their game was, but it didn't sit right with me. I grabbed my rifle, just in case, and headed down to the creek. If they thought they could waltz in and start messing with my land again, they had another thing coming. When I got to the creek, I saw them. They were standing in a circle around the water, looking at it with that same smug expression that Brent had worn the other day. But this time, they weren't offering money. They were taking pictures, jotting down notes, and generally looking like they were about to make a major decision. I cleared my throat, loud enough to get their attention. "You guys lost, or just looking to make more trouble?" One of the suited men turned and flashed a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "We're here to do an environmental impact study," he said. "The HOA has hired us to assess potential risks to the water source, for the community's benefit." I stepped closer, not hiding my skepticism. "Environmental impact? You're out here measuring water in the middle of a drought, and you're telling me it's for the community's benefit? Funny, I didn't know you had permission to be on my land." The man's smile faltered just a bit. "We've been authorized by the city to—" "Bullshit," I interrupted. "Show me the permit. And while you're at it, explain to me how you think I'm going to let you waltz in here and start interfering with my water rights." They didn't expect that kind of response. You could tell they were trying to keep it cool, but I could see the tension in their posture. They knew they had no legal ground to stand on, and it was only a matter of time before I called them out on it. "Listen, this is—" the man started, but I cut him off again. "No, I'm done listening. I don't care what kind of study you're doing or how many fancy degrees you have behind your name. You're trespassing, and if you don't leave, I'll be calling the cops." There was a long, awkward silence. The suited men exchanged glances, and the tension in the air was palpable. Finally, the man who had spoken earlier took a deep breath and muttered something under his breath before signaling for the others to pack up. "Fine," he said through gritted teeth. "We'll leave. But you haven't heard the last of us, Hank." I watched them walk back to their SUVs, fuming, but I wasn't done yet. The thing about bullies is they only understand one thing: force. And right now, I had the law on my side. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me just because they thought they could buy their way out of trouble. As they pulled away, I pulled out my phone and sent a quick message to Amanda. "They're back, and they're getting bolder. Time to hit them with everything we've got." It wasn't over yet, not by a long shot. The next morning, I woke up to a flurry of activity. Amanda had managed to pull all the strings, and it looked like the HOA was finally being cornered. My phone was blowing up with messages, mostly from her telling me to prepare for battle. But I wasn't worried. It was time to finish this thing once and for all. I grabbed my coffee and walked out to the porch. The air was thick with anticipation. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was on the right side of something, and it felt damn good. I wasn't just defending my land anymore. I was defending the law. The same law that the HOA had been treating like a chew toy. Amanda had found their Achilles heel. Turns out, the HOA wasn't just misreporting water usage. They had been hiding a whole network of illegal connections to the pipeline that ran through my land. It was a mess, and once it all came to light, they'd be buried under fines, lawsuits, and public outcry. They hadn't just crossed a line, they'd bulldozed through it, and now they were going to pay. By the time the hearing rolled around, I had a small army behind me. Amanda had pulled in all the heavy hitters, a team of investigators, environmental experts, and a couple of journalists who'd been following the case from the beginning. We had the HOA cornered, and they knew it. When I walked into the courtroom, I could feel the tension in the air. On one side, the HOA's lawyer, slick, polished, and way too comfortable for my liking, was chatting with his clients. On the other side, Amanda and I were huddled, ready to drop the hammer. The judge, an older man with a face that looked like it had seen more courtrooms than he cared to remember, banged his gavel. The trial was underway. "Let's get this over with," he muttered, not looking up from his papers. The judge clearly wasn't interested in the back-and-forth games the HOA was about to try. He'd heard all before. The HOA's lawyer stood up first, trying to play the sympathy card. He spoke about community values and water conservation efforts like he was some sort of environmental hero, all while his clients had been diverting water from my land for years. The whole thing reeked of desperation. But then it was our turn. Amanda stood up, her voice steady and sharp. "Your Honor, what we have here is a clear case of theft. The HOA illegally diverted water from Mr. Callahan's land for their own gain, all while misrepresenting their usage and falsifying records. This isn't about community values. This is about greed, and it's been going on for far too long." She laid out the evidence, piece by piece, photos, records, the illegal pipeline, and even testimonies from construction workers who had been threatened into silence. The more she spoke, the more the HOA's lawyer squirmed. He knew they were losing. The game was up. Finally, the judge spoke. "I've seen enough," he said, his voice as cold as the mountains outside. "This is a clear case of unlawful activity, and I will be ruling in favor of Mr. Callahan. The HOA will be required to pay restitution for the water stolen and cover the full cost of the damages. And as for the criminal activity, that will be investigated further by local authorities." It was over. The courtroom erupted into a buzz of conversation as the HOA lawyer tried to argue, but it was futile. The judge had made up his mind, and that was that. The HOA had lost. But I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel like I'd won anything. Sure, the money, the fines, the legal victories were sweet, but none of that could undo the damage they'd done to the land, to the creek, to the people who lived here and had tried to turn a profit off someone else's resources. Later that night, I sat on my porch looking out at the land. The creek was flowing again, just as it always had. The cows were grazing peacefully, and the stars above were as bright as ever. The world was right again, but only just. Gus came over, as he always did after something big had gone down. He sat down next to me, cracked open a beer, and passed it my way. "Well," he said, staring out at the land, "you sure gave them a run for their money. Maybe now they'll think twice before messing with someone who knows the law as well as the land." I took a sip of the beer, nodding. "Maybe, but I don't think it's over yet. People like them? They don't give up easily." Gus chuckled. You might be right, but hey, at least for tonight, you can relax. You've earned it." I looked out at the creek one last time. The land, the water. It was all mine. It always had been. And as long as I had the strength to stand, it always would be. "Maybe I will," I said, leaning back in the chair. "Maybe I will."